Thank you all for joining us today. As we get started here, understand that this is a recorded session, but I will be watching the chat area live to answer questions and engage in conversation. If there are any answers that we cannot provide today, or you think of something afterward, you can contact me at russ.nicloy@macertechnologies.com. This email address will appear at the end of the slide deck as well. This session is on plan production sheet creation and how to set up for WisDOT projects. Just a real quick note on who I am. I'm a civil drafting and solutions specialist at Macer Technologies for the last couple of years. Previous to that, I was in production for 10 years and then worked for a reseller for 13 years. So I've gotten a broad look at the civil and infrastructure industry. I've also, during that time, worked closely with Wisconsin DOT during the implementation and evolution of their Civil 3D standards. Currently, I am a consultant member of the Methods Development Unit focusing on training. Now, as we look at the agenda for the session here, most of the WisDOT plan and production sheets have common aspects that can be set up early in the workflow. With planning, this can make the project-specific work easier to get to and complete. In this session, we will be looking at how to start the sheets, what should be referenced and how, adding sheets to the project sheet set, and a look at the special sheets that don't follow normal workflows. With that, though, let's start in on creating the sheet file itself. Generally, the sheets that you're going to be starting with are going to start off with the design-start DWT. You can get to that several locations, whether it be in the menu browser, a new function. QNew actually has it set up as the default template to start a file with. Also now, currently, there is a start page that will start when Civil 3D first opens that has a very quick way to get to the templates. So I'll be showing that as we get into this. Also, the tool palettes, or generally most tool palettes, have a startup template. You can see that in the middle screenshot at the bottom there, the startup template design and production button. When you see that, that's what that is. It's a new design start template file that will start a file with all of the WisDOT settings that are appropriate. When you first open a sheet or create a file that's going to be used for sheets, you should set the annotation scale. Now, you don't have to set it, and you don't have to set it necessarily to the scale of the sheet that you're working in, but it's recommended because as you are working in the model area, you'll be able to see how things fit together, if labels are overstriking or if there's an issue graphically. If the annotation scale matches the sheet, it makes that easier to identify and work around. You can change the annotation scale at any time. It does not change measurements of your project, only the size of text and blocks and cross-section grids. Also, the other thing that you want to do very early on, and I'd say right after you start a file, is add all components. What the all components area adds is items that are not in the design start template natively. The idea of the design start was to have a more stripped down template so that you can start drawing files with it and not be over encumbered with the components that you don't need, that are good for sheets but not necessarily for design. So the add all components runs through and adds all of that in for you. This will appear in any of the WisDOT ribbons, the managed panel. And in there, you'll see on the right-hand side there, I've got the add components. Under that, there are other components that you can add, like text styles, block styles, dimensions, and other things. But the all components goes so quickly, just click on that. It's a very fast way to add the components that you need. At the end of a file, if you don't use something, and it's likely that you won't use everything available, you'll purge out the things you don't need. So you'll get that space back. The file won't be as heavy once you are able to purge out the unused items. The other thing that we need to do is, after you've done the annotation scale and add all components, this is a great time to save the file to the proper folder with the proper name. Now, these items are in the FDM 15-5 the attachment 3.1 to 3.5, but really 3.1 to 3.3 is talking about the folder and the proper naming of files. That text right there is link. So if you have the slide deck from this presentation, you can click on that text or basically just follow that to the FDM 15-5 and you'll see that attachment available. Now, when you are using view frames to define views on sheets, this is going to be things like when you're doing plan and profile, that the plan and profile process will create view frames automatically as part of the process. You can create those frames in the sheet that you're working in or in a file separate from where you're working and then data reference it in. If you create them in the sheet that you're working in, you start the sheet file normally and just use the template to do that, and then create the frames in that file directly from the alignment. You will need the alignment data referenced in and probably some other things. We'll talk about references in a bit. But with the alignment in there, those frames will be able to section off the file into what will fit on each page as you're working with it. Now, in the quite likely event that, especially on a larger project, you might have a set of view frames that are going to be used in different areas, for several different sheets so that they all capture the same amount of information on each sheet. It's recommended that you use an outside file, a file that sits in the design folder of your project, the view frame groups folder, and then is named VFG with the alignment name and the scale of the view frames that you're creating in it. With that in that particular file, it'll be easy to find back, but it also means that the view frames will be shareable with or referenceable into many, many different files. The view frame groups are referenceable just like surfaces, alignments, and profiles are, which we're doing for projects anyway, so it's a very similar workflow to get that accomplished. So let's take a look at Civil 3D here. And first of all, when you open up Civil 3D, I'm using 2022 with the WisDOT settings for this. In 2022, we now start off on the start page. It used to start off with a particular drawing file started, but now it starts off on the start page. You can still start files from the Q New button up here, the menu browser, and use New here, or in the Start tab, you can come down here to New, or click the drop down for New and choose Design Start DWT. That's the way I always do it. That kind of confirm the template that I'm using. So I'll click Design Start, and that will start a file straight away. And then once that file has started, I stop immediately and come down here when I'm using it for a sheet. Come down here and make sure to set this to the scale. This is the drawing scale. Set this to the scale that I intend to use for the sheet. So if I'm using a 1:100 sheet, I'll set that right here, and you can see it's listed down below here. As I said, that's more about making sure that the text sizes will look good when we get over to the sheet. The scale that you have set here does not affect the Layout tab. The Layout tab will have its own scales for each viewport that you create over there, but having them match will be useful and just makes it easier to troubleshoot before things get cluttered. Now, I'm actually going to set that back to 1:40 because we are going to use a 1:40 for this one. The other thing that we need to do is to go into one of the WisDOT design tabs, or WisDOT ribbon tabs here. I'll go into WisDOT Sheets because we're dealing with sheets generally. All three of those tabs have a Manage panel, and in the middle is Add Components. Under Add Components is All Components. And really, that's really the only one that you need. All these others are individual items that you could be adding. And if you only want to add one, then fine, you can do that. If you're adding any combination or you're not certain, just use Add All Components. If I click that, you'll see that it actually goes very quickly. And then I've got things like my multi-leader text. There, and you can see all of these. The default text is the only one that's natively there. Otherwise, all of these other ones have been added by that add all. The dimensions, also text styles, some layers that are added, and so forth. So all things that you will want generally available for your sheets. You won't use them all, but they'll all be available to you as you go forward. Now, with that in place, I'm going to come up to the menu browser and click Save As. And I'm going to browse over to where our project is stored. And I'm going to go to the Sheets folder for this. And this file is, and again, looking this up in the FDM 15-5 attachment 3, this is going to be 023201-PS for the permanent signing sheet. I'll click Save. And now this file is ready for me to start in on creating the sheets. Now I do also want to come up here to the Start tab again and open up the other file that I have, that 25100TC for traffic control, because I have some frames that are already created in here. I've got the alignment already data referenced in here and some XREF information so you can see that this is started. And I've created the view frames. Now, at this phase right here, I can't tell you if I've done the view frames here in this file or if I've data referenced them. They will operate the same no matter which situation I've chosen. In this particular case, I did create them here. If you ever need to check, you can come over to Prospector, View Frame Groups, expand that open, and if the View Frame Groups does not have a data shortcut button, there's a little arrow button that'll open up for data shortcuts, then that means it's here. Okay, if there is a button there, that means that there's an outside file where it's stored. I gave you that path earlier. In this case, though, this is VFG 25 for State Highway 25, and it is set to a 100 scale. So if I was going to be doing these as a sheet, I would want to change my scale over to 1:100 and start there as I start those sheets. Now, in both those cases, I am going to hit Save because I have made a change to this file here, and then I can get forward here. If I am going to start in sheets here, I do want to show something a little bit early here, and that is I'm going to go to the Output tab of the ribbon to create sheets from these frames that I have out here. Create frames is here. That's where what I use to create the frames. I'm going to say create sheets here, and I'm going to skip through to the second page here and show you that there is an add to existing sheet set here. Now, you never want to use a new sheet set for a WisDOT project because the new sheet set does not know how to talk to a standard WisDOT title block. So it's always going to be add to existing sheet set. That is the default. So if you forget, you're already ahead of the game here. What you need to do is when you're creating this or adding it, you click on the ellipsis button, come over to our project, which is this project here. I'll go to the Sheets folder, and there you will see a DST file. This is the project DST or project sheet set. Now, you may have more than one sheet set available, so make sure that you have the sheet set that you intend to put sheets into here. If you don't, stop at this point right now, go back and do that. It is that important that you should stop what you're doing, go back and do it, and then come back in and create the sheets to add to the sheet set at this point. Basically what you do is then you just select on the DST file, say Open, and then in here all of this information will be filled out by that selection that you make. Really kind of streamlines the process as well as making the title blocks populate correctly. You'll then just click Create Sheets and create those sheets from here. I'm going to cancel that, and we will be dealing with that in a moment. I'm going to go back to the permanent signage sheets here. And then I'm going to go over to our slide deck and take a look at the next topic, which is referencing data, data and files. You're going to do this in two ways. One is the external reference, or XREF. Those are the, I call them pretty pictures of other files that you need to see, I'm going to say in the background. That way you can, as you're drafting, you know you are working in reference to other information, and you can see spatially where that ends up. The data reference is going to be data shortcut references, and that's things like your surface, existing surface in particular, alignments, profiles. I talked about the view frame groups. Those can be derefed into a file. And so those are the two things that are really important to any sheet, and generally are going to be in every sheet that we make, and there might be some exceptions to that. But really, most of them are going to have both an XREF and derefs in them. The XREFs, what you can do is, if you've done XREFs in the past, you can still use the manual method. That has not gone off. That is the Autodesk way of loading XREFs. I want to focus on the WisDOT tool that has been added here. It's a couple releases ago. WisDOT came up with the WisDOT Load XREF on Layer tool. Now what this does, this tool is actually sitting in any of the WisDOT ribbons in the Manage panel, right below the Add Components. As a matter of fact, look at the screenshot there. In the Manage panel, the XREF tools drop down, and Load XREF on Layer is one of those tools. What this does is you identify what file you want to XREF, and then it sets the relative path, the overlay instead of attachment, the location on the screen as well as rotation and scaling, and then also the layer that the XREF will go on. It sets all of that for you. You don't even see a dialog pop up for that. These are all things that users usually miss in some combination. Now, I have to admit, mine is layers. I would always forget to set the layer on an XREF, and then 2 or 3 days later, really wish I'd done that correctly because it was messing me up with something. But like I said, people were missing some combination of these items, and so this tool does all of those for you. It's a one-stop shop and very easy to get things set correctly for you. As opposed to that, the other kind of reference is the DREF, or data references. This is going to be things like surfaces, where you can reference in existing and probably a refinement surface, maybe some other surfaces as well, but generally existing and one of the refinement surfaces are going to be in your sheets. You can also bring in alignments. Alignments are kind of the boss level of profiles, so if you need a profile, you need the alignment to come in first. Alignments are generally needed for a lot of reasons, including view frame groups are tied to alignments, cross sections are tied to alignments, and so forth. So alignments are a pretty important part of this, and profiles make a lot of appearances as well. Now you will notice that, or you should notice that the existing profiles are not available for data referencing. To cut down on the number of references that are in the lists, and there will be a ton out there, the best practice is just don't make an existing profile data reference, because you could always data reference in the surface and the alignment and then make the existing condition profile natively in that file. Just saves a little bit of space in the lists. Another thing that you data reference is the view frames. We've already seen that, but unless you've built them directly in the sheet file themselves, it's probably going to happen in a lot of sheets. Not all, but a lot of sheets will end up getting a DREF of a view frame. Also, you can data reference in corridors. Now, I think everyone will have seen this at this point on some level. It's just been a couple of years that Autodesk has allowed corridors to be data referenced into files. Very useful in certain circumstances, in particular cross-section sheets. It's very helpful to have the corridor shape being data referenced in rather than being part of the XREF. It's a cleaner way to get the cross-section of the corridor. You also might have reasons for corridors being in sheets for other reasons as well, but it is important to understand that that's available to you. So with that, let's switch back to Civil 3D real quick. And in here, I'm going to go up to the WisDOT, and as I said, any of the 3 WisDOT tabs. I'll go to WisDOT Sheets, go to Manage, and then the XREF tools. I'll drop that down. And in here, I'm going to load XREF on Layer. And then I'm going to browse over. It's going to be in my Project folder, Base folder. The Topo EX is the one I'm bringing in for this file. I'll click Open, and that's literally all I have to do. All the other settings are set there for me. It doesn't zoom me over, so I'm going to have to zoom extend so I can see it, but there is that XREF in this file. Now, with that, you would just continue to XREF those in. Just keep coming up here to load XREF on Layer for all of the XREFs that you might need in a file. I'm also going to come over to the prospector here and come to the data shortcuts. I do need to make sure that I'm in the right project here. There we are. And then I'm going to bring in the surfaces. I'm going to bring in existing. I'll right-click and create a reference for that. And for this, make that existing border. And then I'm going to come down here to Refinement All Top. I'll create a reference for that. And in here, I'm going to set that not to existing border, but I'm going to set it to the datum border because it's a darker color on this white background here. Normally I would be doing that as a top surface, but there you can see those surfaces are now available. You can also make the surfaces not display at all, but they will provide information. As I hover over them, you'll see the elevations and so forth. Another thing that I need to add in here, and I'll be able to see it here, I'm going to watch here as I bring in the alignment, and I'll go to center line alignments for this. I'll right click on 25 and create reference. And the site and the name should always stay what it is, although you can change it. You probably shouldn't. It's a good idea to keep them the same here. Down below, the alignment style and label set, you can set to whatever's appropriate. You will not be hurting anybody else's file or any files that you're working with if you change those here. So I'm going to click OK on that and add that in. I'm also going to return over here and add in the 25 proposed. Notice there's no existing profile here, as I mentioned. I'll right click and create reference, and again I'm going to leave the styles here. We won't really see that until we create a profile view to look at those. So that is what we need. I'm going to come up and click the QSave button. And then with that in place, in particular with the alignment in place, I'm going to come up to the Output tab of the ribbon, to the Plan Production Create View Frames. And I'm going to start with the 25, the station range here. I'm going to go from 360.00 to my northern edge here is 426. I'll say 427.00. I'll hit Enter. And then in here, I'm going to use the plan profile to create this. Now this file, this one is 40 scale. The other file was 100 scale. So I'm going to start with a 40 scale for this. And in the view frame group, make sure that my name is here. So VFG, the alignment name will be part of that with the counter. I'm going to add in here 40 so that I will get a 40 scale viewport on these. With that, I'm going to say next and make sure that my styles say no display for these so that I don't see the lines and I don't see the text in this particular case. I'm going to say create view frames, and there you can see those view frames all along that project. Also notice that I can come over here and I do have a corridor. I'm not going to add that in for this one. If you add in a corridor, it does need alignments and profiles, or the alignment and profile that defined it. If you don't have that information already data shortcutted in here, it will automatically bring that info for you. So it's a quick way to bring in alignments and profiles with the corridor. Just bring the corridor in and it does that for you. So I'm going to come up here and click Save to save that file so that we can move forward with it later on. And then let's take a look at the special sheet cases. These are things that don't follow the normal rules but happen quite frequently, like title sheets or miscellaneous quantities or earthwork speed sheets, or the plan and plan or plan over profile and profile, special sheets such as that. Let's start off first of all talking about the title sheets. In the title sheets in particular, you're going to be adding county maps to the inset. Now these county maps are at the link that's here. Again, if you've downloaded the slide deck here, that's a link. Or you could go to the consultant resources page on the internet and find this information. At that location, you'll see two options. One is the 2016 County Maps STB. Those are the old style. It's a different kind of colorization. Really, it's only there if you have an older project that you need to finish up. The one that you want to use, though, is the 2022 County Maps. These are the up-to-date ones. Basically, what I do is I download them and put the whole County Maps zip file in a C drive location so that I can get to it and my IT group can't change a folder and get me to lose them. I unzip them in that location, then I copy any maps that I need directly into the projects I'm working on. That way I still have the originals in that C drive location and can use it for other projects and so forth. But I have a version of the county map that I need to work with in the project so that I can edit it. The county maps usually have a lot more information that you need, but then you can decide what it is you need out of that map and make some adjustments to it as you're using it without affecting the original. In the title sheets, you will be able to edit attributes of the title block. A lot of the information that you will be printing on the title block are attributes to the block itself, so you just double click and you'll get a list of all of the information. You don't have to fill them all in, but it's a great place to go in and fill that data in if you do have it. The title sheet blocks and multi-leader notes are in the tool palette. I have that on the right-hand side of the screen there. We've got a couple of multi-leader notes at the very top there, the range east and west you can see, as well as the title sheet blocks which are below it. Generally, the edit attributes will be enough to fill in most of the data, but if you need to add in maybe a second signature block or something else that you need more of, you've got the options in the title sheet block to add that from there. The miscellaneous quantities and earthwork speed sheets, basically speed sheets are just a drawing file that have a series of boxes in it, and you can see that on the right-hand side of my screen here. Each box is related to one of the layout tabs that will be in this file. Anything that you draw or place into those frames will show up in their related layout tab or layout sheet. Now, to create the miscellaneous quantity or earthwork speed sheets, you go to the appropriate palette, either the quantities or the earthwork. I've got an example of both there, and click on the O3 miscellaneous quantities speed sheet or the earthwork data speed sheet. Now, in both of these, the boxes will be there, and above that are some instructions for use. This is kind of the old style way to use them. Still available, still, you're still able to use it. This is where you link information from Excel spreadsheets into those boxes. There is now a tool in the WisDOT standards that does this process more directly. It's a little bit easier to work with than these older instructions. The older instructions are still there. It's not going to hurt anything, but there's a better tool than what those instructions say. So with that, let me switch back over to Civil 3D. And from here, I'm going to go to the WisDOT Sheets tab of the ribbon, over to Sheet Creation. I'm going to open up the Title palette here. I'll click that. If this doesn't open up, you can toggle it on and off with this Palettes button here. Now in here, it does open up with two tabs. It opens up to the title. I'm going to click on the Design and Production here to start a brand new file. And then in this new file, I'm going to use one of the sheet layouts here, depending on the size of the inset or the scale of the inset, either 1/2 mile, 1 mile, or 2 mile. I'm going to use the 1 mile version here, so I'll click on that. At the command line, it's asking for a name. I'm just going to type in 01, and that will create that layout tab for me. Now, that's down here, and I'm going to right-click on Layout and say Delete just to clean that up. I don't need the Layout tab anymore. It's kind of a placeholder. In here, I can double-click on the title block, and you get a listing of all of the fields that are available here. You can see that there are quite a few. Now notice that there's 4 project IDs. That's because project ID shows up here, down here somewhere. There's a 4th one in here. Basically what you do is you come in, identify which one you want to work with, and then change the value. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I would set more fields than this. I'm just going to say OK to show that that puts that text into that location there. Other things that you can do with the title block, I'm going to come over here to this state, and I can identify which counties I'm working in by selecting on the state, then selecting on the drop-down arrow here. I'm going to scroll down here. Of course, I'm using something at the very bottom of the list. That is Vilas County. You can see that that shades that in here. Now I'm also working in Oneida at the same time. It crosses that border, so I'm going to type hatch and then make sure that I'm on the solid hatch and click inside Oneida County, and now I've got those two identified for this sheet. I also need to get the inset here. What I'm going to do for that is go over to the Model tab, and then I'm going to go to the Manage panel. I'm in one of the WisDOT Sheet tabs here. The Manage panel, the XREF tools, load XREF on layer, Then I'm going to browse over to the project folder, to the base folder. Now I've dropped the map, the county map files that I want to use in this other folder here. So I'm going to click on ByList 21 and create that data shortcut there. And now I'm going to zoom back a little bit so that I can see that. Now, as I said earlier, there's a lot more information here than what we want to use. So I'm going to go over to the Home tab of the ribbon, Layers panel, use the Off command, and then select on items that we want to remove from this. As I select these items, they will kind of clear out here. I'm going to zoom in here and get rid of the lake hatching and the hatching for this area here. I'm also going to take out the grid in this particular case. And the airport symbol, I don't need that. That's actually a hatch and an outline. I'll also get rid of the lake names. You get the idea. You can go through and turn off a lot of information that is in the way or may just clutter up what's going on in your drawing file. I'm going to get rid of the roads here as well and just leave the county and state roads there. So with that in place, I'm going to go over to my 01 layout tab. I'll double click in the inset and then I'll unlock that so that I can zoom and pan. And I'm going to zoom extents here so I can find the area here. Then I'm going to zoom into the area where this says. I'm going to intentionally zoom in closer than I want because as I set the scale, that means it has to zoom back for me and I can still see where I'm at. Otherwise, you might be in a blank area and zooms in and then you can't find where you're at. So I'm going to zoom in here. Then I'm going to tell the scale of that viewport to be the 1 inch equals 1 mile. There's half a mile there as well. So here's the 1 mile. I'll click that. Then I'll pan this to be enough. I'm going to go back in later and add the Vilas County map in here, but I will lock that right now so that I don't accidentally change the scale of that or pan it in any way. So now in this sheet, the other thing that you can do is come over to the title palette and you can add multi-leader text. Maybe I need to add the end project station. I'll click in here and click that point right there. Now it's going to ask at the command line if I want to overwrite the text. And while some of that is true, I don't. I'm going to say no to that. And you get this end project station. I obviously want to change the X's here to the correct station. So I'm going to double click on that and I'll open that up. And I believe it was 426 plus 00 was the end of our project there. And you can put other items in here. They're all individually controlled as labels there. You can also set the town and range settings around the outside edge of this view here using those tools. Or you can come down here to the title sheet blocks. As I said, we do have information in here like design designation. But if you need to do a second one of those, I believe, here's title sheet additional design designation right here. So I could click on that and add a second in there for project number 2. And now that does open. This opened on my other screen. This opens the edit attributes for that particular area here. This information is in the title block, but since I added this as its own block, it has its own information. You just fill that out. That fills the text in over here and goes from there. Now that's the title sheet. I'm going to close that out and I'm going to go into the WisDOT sheets sheet creation and look at quantity or earthwork. Actually, I'm going to do the quantity. They both operate the same. When I click on that, I'm going to click on, oh, not that, the palettes button here to open that up. So I've got the quantities palette with the miscellaneous quantity speed sheet. When I click that, it will start a brand new file for me. And again, you can see all of those frames. Here are the instructions of the old style way to use these. Each of these frames is down here. I'm going to do this in layout number 6. I'm going to draw a polyline here, and then if I switch to 6, you can see that that shows up in that view. So I'm going to go back to the model tab here and bring in some information. Instead of going and doing the old school pasting of a link, I'm going to go to the WisDOT Sheets tab of the ribbon, go to the Sheets tool drop-down, and at the bottom is Create Data Links and Tables. And in here, I'm going to select an Excel file to work with. I'm going to browse over to our project, the design folder, quantity folder, MQ folder, and here's a whole bunch that I want to work with. I'm going to use these pipes first, let's say. I'll open that one. And then with that, I'm going to use the relative path. I'm going to allow writing to source file, so I'm going to write back to it. I'm also going to use the Excel formatting, which is good. If you need to change the formatting, that means you should go into the Excel file, change it there, and then that will update over here. I'll click OK, and process is complete. That data is now loaded. I'm going to go back in and bring in the structure XLSX and repeat that step. Just click OK. Takes a half a second for it to process complete. Now I can come over to tables and I can see both the pipe and the structures are available here. Now I'm actually going to select both of these and use the table style of WisDOT standard and say OK. And then I'll select a point here for layout 1. And it's building tables, please wait. It's actually pulling information from Excel, so it does take a second to line all that up. And there I'm going to close out that dialog, and you can see those tables are in place. Now, if they, in the quite likely event that they're too big for the sheets that we're working with here, and they're sticking out the end, go over to Excel and clean up what you can, maybe shorten the width of the columns, what have you. In fact, a side note, that is what I did before I started this. I noticed that they were going to go over, so I did that over there and dropped these in as I need to. Now I can come into O1 and see that table in place. So with that in place, let's go back to our slide deck and look at adding layout tabs to the sheet set manager. Now, first of all, you need a sheet set. We've talked about this earlier. If you don't have a sheet set when you start to create sheets, you should stop and get that done first. That should be done earlier in the process, if not earlier in the project. You can create sheets from the view frames automatically, as in when you're doing the plan and profile sheet creation. View frames are part of that process. As is the sheet set manager part of it. It will, if you're going through the full plan and profile sheet creation process, it will ask you, how you want to create those view frames. We looked at that a little bit earlier. However, you just saw me create a title sheet and a miscellaneous quantities sheet. Those are more manual. Those aren't things that automatically get added to the sheet set as a plan and profile sheet would be. What happens if you need to manually add those in? First of all, you need to find that sheet set. Again, if it's not there, create it first. But here you can see this is from a different project, but this is a DST for the project. I actually have two DSTs here. One is kind of the template that I was using that day. But here is that DST that I'm going to choose as we go forward. During the Create Sheets process, the view frames automatically add to the sheet set. You should always pick Add. We've talked about that already, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But it's important enough that I wanted to put in its own slide here to kind of call attention to it. Now, if you're manually adding sheets, you are going to want to, first of all, open up the sheet set for the project in the Sheet Set Manager. And then you can right-click in the Sheet Set Manager, whether it be on the project number at the top or one of the subset numbers down below. You right-click where you want to drop it, basically, and then choose the option of Import Layout as Sheet. There is an option for that in the Layout tab. I've seen some funny results with it. I mean, it works just fine, but if the file isn't saved or if something isn't open the way that you think it is, it may not work the way that you want. I think it's better to go into the Sheet Set Manager to do it. It's just more straightforward. You can import multiple drawing files while you're using the Import Layout as Sheet. You will see it is a checkmark list of all the files available. You can browse around and pick different files and get sheets from wherever is important to you. Now, you may also need to rename or renumber the files or the sheets after they get placed. You can see in my screenshot there under typical sections I've got an 01 and 02. A lot of times they'll come in with a 1-, 2-, basically kind of like a counter prefix. And you'll want to take that out. Maybe the name will come in not quite the way that you wanted it to. Rename, renumber is very easy to do. There's a little dialog that pops up that gives you access to everything that you need. You will also want to move the sheets under the correct subsets. Currently you can see that under the 02 area are general notes, project overview, typical sections. I've chosen to move the 01 and 02 under typical sections because in the title block, depending on the type of sheet you're working with, but the subset is many times programmed to be in the title block as well. So having it under the correct subset is correct, and that's a best practice. So that's something that you can drag them into any order that's appropriate here. And keeping them in order in the Sheet Set Manager can help plotting later, because you can plot your whole project, or just parts of it if you need, from the Sheet Set Manager. So with that, let's go back to Civil 3D. And in here, I'm going to close the tool palette here, but I'm going to type in SSM to open up the Sheet Set Manager and click the drop down here. Now, in the open drop down, this is where you can start a new sheet set or click open. I'm going to click open this time because I know my project is already there. But if you're having to create one, you can come up here to new sheet set. I'll click open. And in here, I'm going to browse over to our project into the sheets folder. And there is that DST that I'm looking for. I'll click open. And there you can see I actually don't have any sheets in it yet. I haven't done the plan and profile sheets in here yet, but if I did, those would be under one of these subsets here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on 03. I'll say new subset. And for the new subset, I'm going to say miscellaneous quantities, which actually, as an example, is pretty much done already, because that is automatically in this title block. But I'm going to put it there anyway so people can find it if they're hunting through the project. I'll right-click on this subset and then come down to Import Layout as Sheet. I'll click that, and then in here, Browse for Drawings. You do not need to add the file that is currently active, and you do not need to have a file open to add it. I can go to whatever area that I want to in here and add whatever's appropriate. Now, we are doing sheets here, so I'll go back to sheets. And I just realized that I actually don't have the file saved yet, the title sheet or the miscellaneous quantities here. So I'm going to cancel out of these. Basically, I'm going to hit Menu Browser, Save As, and browse over to our projects, to our Sheets folder. And this one is going to be miscellaneous quantities is 030201-MQ. And the title sheet is 010101-TI. These files do have to be saved before they can be brought in, because they need pathing and so forth for the sheet manager to work with them. So what I'm going to do is come up here to 01. I'll say new subset, and this will be the title sheet. And then I'll right-click on title sheet and say Import Layout as Sheet. Now notice the title sheet is open, but it's not the one that's active, and it does not matter. It does not have to be open. It does not have to be active. In fact, it can be open like it is right now. I'll browse for drawings. I'll select that file. I'll click open. You'll see it here. You'll see that it's available for import. I'll import checked. Then that drops in there. For the miscellaneous quantities, import layout sheet. I'll come into the miscellaneous quantity sheet and open that one. Now that's looking at all of these sheets. I can actually say that I don't want all of these. I only want the two that I want, the first two there. It sees all of the layout tabs, so it offers that to you, but we only want 1 and 2. So I'll import check there, and those will be placed. And then we could also do the TC, the traffic control sheets as well. I won't do that one, but there you can see those are now available in our file. If you hover over these, they will give you a little preview of what they are showing, or generally so, and you can double click on them to open them up from the Sheet Set Manager. Now, if these were to come in the wrong order, you can click and drag them around. So I could drag that up and change the order. Actually, I do want two to follow one, obviously. Notice that there's a blue line to indicate where it's going to be dropped. Or if I dragged it to another subset, I could drop it when it's highlighted. I could put it in between them if I get the blue line, or go to it directly. Of course, we want that to be here in this order. The order does matter later on because you can publish from here. You can use the Sheet Set Manager as a publishing tool, and having it in the right order will make that a lot easier when you get to that point. And with that, let's switch back over to the slide deck and look at the conclusions of this session. First of all, remember, starting files and adding layout tabs can be expedited through the tool palettes. The tools are there because you are probably going to be in that area anyway, so it's a great place to do it. You can do it the more traditional method for adding layout tabs, but the tool palettes have everything set for you in a really nice, concise way. Also, all sheets need add all components, and to set the drafting scale is not as pertinent, but add all components is almost an absolute, where it's just going to help as you get deeper into the sheet creation process. Every sheet needs the components that brings in. Also, I'll recommend that you use the WisDOT XREF tool. Again, you can use more traditional tools, but the XREF tool will get all 5 of the settings correct and get everything in place for you in just a couple of clicks instead of having to hunt around for things. The view frame groups, you could data reference them in if their view frame is going to be used for several different files, then make it in its own file and then data reference it in. Or you could just build the view frame group in the file that you're building the sheets in if it's only in one spot. The data reference has the benefit of letting the frames be exactly the same location for every sheet that you're building with it. So if that's your intent, highly recommend data reference for that. But for simplicity's sake and smaller projects, building it in the file that you're building the sheets in is acceptable. And then the Sheet Set Manager, I know I said this quite a lot, but never use the new function for the Sheet Set Manager when you're building the plan and profile sheets. It will ask you, do you want to use new or an existing? Always use the existing and set it to the project that is already built. If that project DST is not already built, stop, go back and build it first. It is worth every part of that because the title blocks will not respond well if you aren't using the correct Sheet Set Manager for the project. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for their time and attention today. Hopefully we've been able to answer questions as the session has gone on, but I would like to address questions if possible. If you want to email me questions or comments, please email me at russ.nicloy@macertechnologies.com, and the QR code there on the screen will put that directly into your email for you so you don't misspell any of the rather long email address there. So thank you very much.